Within the Legend of Zelda series, there is this very well kept and closely guarded secret that Link, the protagonist, is often seen paired together with the Master Sword. You know, the sword of legend that seals the darkness. The sacred blade of evil's bane? Ring any bells? No? Well, I don't really blame you. You see, Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, by extension, have graciously bestowed upon the Master Sword a fittingly accurate and brand new title. A title that fans of the series, new and old, are now begrudgingly guaranteed to be familiar with. But Gossip Geist, I hear you shouting. What illustrious and lofty new title are you referring to? Oh, come on. You already know this one. It's Fragile.
Fragile.
Okay, we all know that the Master Sword is supposed to be this all-powerful blade that sends the forces of evil running for the hills at the mere sight of it. The sword that was once the weapon of choice and wielded by the goddess Hylia herself before passing it on to her chosen knight in the distant future. The sword that we painstakingly infused with the essence of the three golden goddesses themselves, which, may I remind you, are the literal creators of the very planet that we walk upon in this series. The sword that utterly defeated and Luigi's Mansioned a dimension-defying, space-time shattering, reality-rending Demon King deity with ease. The same Demon King deity who almost gave Hylia a run for her money after multiple games of demonstrating time and time again that the Master Sword is a terrifying force to be reckoned with. If you happen to be on Santa's naughty list at least, it should go without saying at this point that the Master Sword has become widely considered by many to be one of the most unbelievably badass blades ever created. It was beginning to seem like nothing could ever hope to stand even the slightest chance against this weapon, that no evil would ever be able to rise above it, or at least until Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sort of ruined that. For tens of thousands of years, the Master Sword has endured countless battles against the hordes of darkness and the sinister select few who could command them, only to be shattered like a porcelain plate. These tenebrous tendrils apparently packed so much of a punch that it made the sword that's supposed to strike the fear of God into the hearts of dubious dudes look like a crayon. What sort of workout routine does Slim Jim Man over here even do to accomplish this kind of gain? Tenpenny Tower better watch out if this ghoul ever decides to get uppity, that's for sure. I guess in order to figure out how the sword that sometimes seals the darkness got so weak in these two games, we'll have to start by going over everything that we know about the sword and how it works in the first place. Over the years, the Master Sword has done its absolute best to make something crystal clear to us, the player. It can't seem to make up its mind, and it's also extremely picky. There's an ever-changing set of rules that one must abide by before being granted access to this sacred blade, prerequisites that you'll come to occasionally find to be different from game to game. In Skyward Sword, as you may already know, Link crafts the Master Sword himself throughout his journey. At the end of the game, the spirit of the sword, Fi, chooses to remain within the blade, dormant, patiently awaiting the next hero who would one day have need of her aid once more. This is the biggest reason why the Master Sword is only capable of being pulled from its pedestal by the one who harbors the spirit of the hero, or at the very least someone who has properly demonstrated their worthiness through trials. When it is said that the sword is the one that chooses its master, what they're actually saying is Fi has fully acknowledged her wielder to be suitable enough to be her master. However, there are some instances in which the Master Sword will outright refuse and sometimes even retaliate against the hero's attempts to lay claim to it. The hero of Time was simply far too young to wield the blade, so to remedy this, upon being pulled, the Master Sword sealed Link inside the Chamber of Sages and kept him in stasis until his body aged, becoming 7 years older. The hero of Time, now a strapping 17-year-old Giga Chad, Link was finally lanky enough to lift those iron boots and give good old Ganondorf a proper Kokiri kick in the Deku nuts. So thanks to Ocarina of Time, we now know that the hero needs to be within range of a certain age or perhaps a certain height in order to claim the Master Sword. Well, that doesn't exactly add up, since the Hero of Winds is arguably one of the youngest heroes the series has ever had, right next to the Hero of Time, but for some reason the Hero of Winds never needed to be aged in order to wield the Master Sword. As it turns out, this isn't the only deviation that the Master Sword experiences between the two games. In The Wind Waker, the sword, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, now requires the prayers of two sages in order to maintain its ability to repel evil, an affliction that wasn't present in any of the previous games up until now. Both Twilight Princess and The Wind Waker comfortably take place place somewhere around 200 to maybe 300 years after Ocarina of Time, and yet in Twilight Princess, the Master Sword is just as, if not more powerful than it was in Ocarina of Time, no prayers needed. Even A Link to the Past is the same way, no prayers needed for the blade to be fully functional, so what's going on here? Why is the Master Sword sometimes incredibly overpowered while other times it's as dull as my personality? Well, unfortunately the answer to that question is depressingly simple. That's just the way the developers wanted it to be. As difficult as it is to believe, there just might not be a lore-based explanation for the crappiness of the Master Sword in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Now before you pimp slap that dislike button, please allow me to explain. The way the Master Sword behaves in each Zelda game is dictated by the way the game itself was designed. Ocarina of Time's major theme was time progression, which justified the unique mechanic of the Master Sword requiring the hero to be of certain age to wield it. The Wind Waker's major theme was maturing, growing up and becoming the person who you were meant to be. The Master Sword in the Wind Waker is supposed to mirror Link's level of maturity. This is the reason why the Master Sword starts off in a weakened state. Even though Link has pulled the Master Sword and is now squaring up with Ganondorf in the Forsaken Fortress, you can very clearly tell that he's still afraid and uncertain of his own abilities, questioning himself if he's truly ready to go head-to-head with this wicked man. After a humiliating defeat, Link now understands that he needs to become even stronger and far more brave than ever before. Thus, Link and the friends he made along the way continue to grow alongside the Master Sword as they work together to recover its lost power. This journey of self-improvement is what justified the unique mechanic of the Master Sword requiring the prayers of sages to remain fully powered. Once you begin looking at every Zelda game that contains the Master Sword from this perspective, everything starts to make perfect sense as to why things are the way they are. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are admittedly a little more frustrating to come to terms with than the other titles. One might say that Ganondorf's enhanced abilities through the Secret Stone is what ultimately caused the Master Sword to break. However, that doesn't explain why the Master Sword can also break simply by cutting down trees or even slaying a few bokoblins. If the very blood itself that flows within all monsters was infused with gloom or something, then that would be a great way to explain a deteriorating Master Sword since gloom is known to decay all weapons. But again, trees and rocks exist. If you really wanted to stretch things, then you could argue that using the Master Sword for unintended purposes will cause the blade to break. But come on now, let's be real. The developers just wanted the sword to break. They already shocked everyone by revealing a damaged Master Sword in Breath of the Wild, so they wanted to go one step further by breaking it entirely in Tears of the Kingdom. The awful durability mechanic is justification enough to explain away the reasoning behind the weakness of the Master Sword in both games, but they also really wanted to sell to the player the idea that the threats to Hyrule are becoming stronger and more powerful than ever before. The idea that the Master Sword, the only known relic that's supposed to keep us safe, is slowly becoming overshadowed and outdated by an ever-growing evil. This approach was meant to instill fear and hopelessness upon the player. The developers understandably didn't want the player to have a powerful, unbreakable weapon which would go against their entire durability system and overall design of the game itself, and they also wanted the story to make you feel like you were truly being threatened by this version of Hyrule. Like it or not, these are more than likely meant to be the justifications for the unique mechanic of the Master Sword being so weak in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. At the end of the day, it's all just a video game, so rightfully it needs to play and feel like one too, so I can't be too mad at the developers for their decisions. Let's just hope that someday in the future we might actually get the chance to look back on these two games and connect a lore-related reason for the brittle blade of Evil's Bane buckling its knees before the insurmountable might of the common tree. Now, if you would like to hear a more lore-based explanation for the Master Sword breaking in Tears of the Kingdom, then I highly recommend checking out this video made by Thinking at Max Volume. A massive thank you goes out to my Heroes Shade Tier YouTube members, Florian, Jonsey G, Dr. Marbel, GameTrekker, and Simon D. You are all Bonafide legends. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed yourself, there is much more to come in the future, so please subscribe and stick around for another bite of Zelda lore from Gossip Geist.